Begin first by perhaps you giving us a sense of what is new in this new system that is going to change.
You know, the guidelines issued yesterday are actually just clarifying what the requirements of the King report that was issued in the prior year. Companies have been asked to produce an integrated report for year-end starting on or after March 2010, which means companies that are now approaching the year-end in March needs to follow this. These guidelines deal with integrated reporting, and I think at Deloitte we believe it is important to distinguish between integrated reporting, which is the process of embedding the risks associated with the long-term sustainability of your company, including those risks associated with the environment and social factors, in embedding the risk and the action plan against it in your strategy. Integrated reporting is merely the follow-through of that. In terms of integrated reporting, I think the essence for me is that should be a report that puts the financial and non-financial indicators in relation to each other in one place. So, for example, for people-intensive company, one would expect to see a reduction in training cost to be reflected in the hours training per employee in your sustainability report. So, integrated reporting is asking you to display that information in a way that the reader can understand the impact of a cost reduction on a long-term strategy. I think it's also asking to look at carbon credit and carbon taxes and the increase of electricity price on the long-term strategy, and to report on what you think should happen in your organization in relation to that.
How big a burden do you see this placing on companies? You talk about the fact that companies that are reporting in March are expected to integrate part of the proposed changes.
I think, as I said earlier, the King report has alluded to this quite a while ago, and I think South African companies has been producing sustainability reports for quite some time now. It has never been a requirement, so that is new. In South Africa, about 70% of large companies are currently producing sustainability reports, and the new guidelines are just asking you to put that information in your sustainability report in context of the financial information, and to display in your strategy what your plans are. So I think it is a big burden. We can't get away from that, and in the era of increasing regulation, any burden is not good. But I think we know that greater transparency is required. So I think companies will cope with this. There has been warning, and we also have to remember the apply or explain principle in King that gives companies the opportunity to perhaps apply to an extent and explain the rest, and then maybe produce a plan of getting to the full integrated report in due time. Yeah,
I suppose associated, this is the natural question, will it cost companies more to comply with these regulations? And how much more?
It's a difficult one. I think to embed a strategy that deals with long-term sustainability risk in your organization should already be in place. If you look at carbon taxes and electricity, it is in the interest of the company to look at the use of electricity and to reduce that. That will be cost saving. What will introduce cost is the need to report and the need to assure that report, but I think that is minimal in relation to the potential saving and the benefit of the assurance given to the reader that the company is considering these matters in their long-term strategy.
Jean-Francois, you are an economist and you look at these things when you consider overall the investment climate for businesses in a particular country. Would these kind of reforms and the burden that they place on companies make it easier and more attractive for companies to come to, say, for instance, South Africa, in this instance, pioneering these reforms?
Well, as Nina was saying, as long as the cost of the company remains minimal compared to the indirect benefits it can draw, for instance, a greater visibility, a greater sustainability of the business environment in the medium to long term, a quality of reporting that puts South Africa at an advantage compared to some other countries, because as you say, we're a bit of a model there. When you look at surveys that are being done, for instance, by the World Economic Forum or by the Institute for Management and Development, about where South Africa ranks on a different scales for different variables, generally when it comes to the to the business environment, to the quality of reporting, to the tax system, to the auditing system. These are brownie points for South Africa. These are good points. We want to continue it that way. We want a legal clarity, a transparency of corporate reporting, a fairly high level of corporate governance, because ultimately that will drive investment into South Africa. And I dare say also good investments, like ethical businesses, environmentally conscious businesses, in a world where the green economy will no doubt take a bigger part in the future than it has so far, because our population is growing, our take on resources is growing. That will put South Africa at an advantage.
But I suppose you can't run away from the fact that it's another layer, it's another regulation, and it's another cost for companies.
And businesses don't like regulations.
Absolutely.
Generally. But it is also up to the government to make it as easy as possible, less cumbersome as possible for businesses to comply with these regulations. I mean, simplifying red tape doesn't mean that you scrap regulations. It means that you reduce the amount of forms, you reduce the amount of reports. If you can integrate several requests, several requirements into, for instance, one single report, you might have cut red tape while at the same time ensuring that your companies adhere to the higher standards. Yeah.
Nina, what chances are there that the G20 will adopt these reforms and accept them, coming as they do at a time when the world is beginning again to stabilize after that period of instability that we saw, and there's been a raft of regulations that have come through, particularly focused on the banking sector?
It's been integrating reporting is not new. So, and internationally, there is a global committee looking at guidelines for integrated reporting as well. So, I think it will be accepted. I think there's general. If you can't pick up any business media at the moment without reference to economic and social matters and environmental matters, so. I think it will be very difficult to decline this one. And I do want to say that the burden here is nothing in comparison with the burden associated with regulations such as Basel and Solvency II. This is merely extending your strategy and clarifying to your readers what you plan to do. Yeah,
but at the same time, we're also having auditors appearing unsure how they will be able to sign off these ones. Are their concerns misdirected and perhaps not right?
I can't speak for the profession as a whole, but at Deloitte, we've been appointing engineers and environmentalists to deal with this for quite some time. As I said earlier, the sustainability reporting has been with us for quite a while, and we've used those engineers and environmentalists to assist us in the capacity as specialists to produce those opinions. So. I think we are ready to do this. The concept of using a specialist is nothing different than to use an actuary to help assess the liability of an insurance company, or an engineer to assess the reserves of a resource company. So the principle of relying on a specialist has been with us for forever. We have been looking at sustainability reporting and producing opinions on sustainability reports for quite some time. We now need to look at relations, and there's a little bit more forward-looking information. So yes, it's increased risk, but we are ready to deal with that.
Yeah. At the same time, though, we're also seeing the suggestion that these reforms be extended to the non-profit sector. In other words, they also cover non-governmental organizations. I would imagine the resources that these have to deal with those kind of demands would be very different to those of private companies. But is it practical to ask NGOs to be implementing them?
I think for our NGOs, we have to be conscious of the additional burden, as we should be with our other companies, our public companies, our listed companies. So I don't think it's that different. And I think what you're asking is for companies and organizations, including NGOs, to be responsible corporate citizens and to report on their actions and to consider the long-term sustainability of the organization. So these are things that they're probably doing. Assurance of sustainability report for NGOs, I think we have to look at the New Companies Act and look at the assurance requirements there. And one would think that we would follow the requirements for auditing financial statements and perhaps apply that to smaller companies and NGOs, which is slightly more relaxed.